get so many questions now about pollinators in the gardens and in our landscapes. And it's a very good question, and it's a very positive question depending on who you ask. So it's my pleasure to have Judy Wu-Smart with us today, and Judy is going to be talking to us about pollinators in the landscape. Judy, what is the overarching question that people ask, or more importantly, what do you recommend for them when they're talking about introducing pollinators to their landscape?
I would say think about diversity. Think about promoting biodiversity in your plants so you can create a landscape that will encourage and attract multiple species of pollinators, from bees to butterflies to flies and beetles. So think about biodiversity, and creating a habitat is going to be suitable for lots of different organisms.
We know they want a list of plants. Are those the sorts of things that really make a lot of sense for people, or are they really better off to think about this as a system, or are there a handful of plants that you would recommend?
Well, a list is great, but you can be overwhelmed by the number of plants that are being in those lists. So I would consider thinking about plants that will bloom in the spring, in the summer, and in the fall, and provide nectar and pollen sources for those pollinators throughout the season. And think about your plant list in terms of how can I create diverse plant resources. So think about the color of those plants, the shape of those plants, their growth habits, and that will really encourage the most diverse population of pollinators that you can into your garden.
What do we want to say about using pesticides in the landscape, especially if we're trying to not only attract those pollinators but keep them healthy?
Well, I would consider when you're sourcing your plants to try to ask the nurseries or the plant sources if they treat their plants for systemic compounds, because those can be a little bit more persistent and long-lasting in the plants themselves. The other thing I would really strongly encourage is that people think about the use of their pesticides, and that includes herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides. Use them when you need it as a last resort to treat something that you know and have identified and monitored those levels. So use them wisely, use them sparingly, and try to find products that have lower toxicity to pollinators, and that will significantly improve both your garden and sustain some healthy pollinator communities.
What do we think about people who want hives in town? Is that a really good idea? Is that more difficult than it sounds?
Well, I think that the most common thing is that there's a lot of people who really want to help bees, and you don't have to own hives to help bees. It starts with the landscape, but if you've done that and you want to keep going and you are interested in beekeeping, the first thing is to take a course, to take a class, to learn about what it takes, not just financially, but time commitment wise, and really see if that is a suitable hobby or adventure that you want to start. It does have a lot of upfront costs, and it does take some time to manage, but it is a very rewarding hobby, and it is a very rewarding way to connect with nature.
Thanks, Judy. I know our audience is really going to appreciate that information and look forward to spring, when finally those pollinators can come out of their hibernation for the season.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.